Hi, my name is Nolan Hack. I'm a black revolutionary from Los Angeles, California.
My name is Sederrick. I'm a writer. That's all I'm going to go with this week. Living in Texas.
My name is Illari Chaska, LA, interested in the liberation of Temanahuac.
Nice.
All right. So the topic at hand is our heroes through history and how they are whitewashed by Western society and white folks.
Mm.
So MLK Day was 2 days ago, and for me, it's like the holiday has been just hijacked. When I was a kid, I enjoyed it when we got out of school, but we celebrate this amazing man, all the things he did for us, and put his life on the line. But now, just with him especially, you look at him, and the way America views him is, well, what a nice, passive man who just wanted to sing Kumbaya with everybody and hope this stuff goes away. When in actuality, especially the older he got and the closer he got to death, he was a complete revolutionary. He wanted the eradication of capitalism. He was against militarization in the Vietnam War. He denounced America for what it is, calling out the founding fathers. But that's not what we that's not what is said in the media through our education system. So Twitter was a complete mess just on Monday. And Muhammad Ali's birthday is today.
Oh, nice. Happy birthday. Rest in peace, man. Rest in power.
Amen. And his legacy is whitewashed. He's kind of viewed as obviously amazing fighter, fighting Parkinson's later in his life, anti-war and all this stuff. But he was pretty upfront when he was living that he didn't like how white people treated people of color. He even supported indigenous people and went to Africa trying to learn more about our homeland, and yet that's not the Muhammad Ali we're presented with. And I mean, you can keep going with different heroes for us through the years that have been sullied by whiteness, for lack of a better word. But what do you guys think about all this, especially with MLK Day 2 days ago?
Growing up,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think it's very interesting that, for example, how you mentioned Martin Luther King, that it's never mentioned how much he was actually hated. I mean, they hated him enough to kill him for saying something, talking about injustices. The same thing with Muhammad Ali, that years later we see a lot of memes about him, and also, but there's no reflection on the fact that he was very disliked. He was seen as an extremist in his time period, and it's very interesting how now, the people that we see now hating, let's say, Black Lives Matter, would hate Martin Luther King, would hate Muhammad Ali, because what they're saying is very similar to what, the movement, whether you disagree with their movement or not, they're saying the same thing, that it is wrong to treat African people different based on who they are.
Yeah, it's growing up, I used to hear about MLK and all those people from my grandparents. So it never really felt like a day for anyone in particular. So I have noticed since I've been on social media, I have liked it a lot less, just because this is my first MLK Day on Twitter.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm usually on Facebook, and I'm just used to all those like insincere, like I have a dream, like quotes, and it's always about love. Like Martin Luther King is always paired with that word love, because it's like we always have to preempt the anger of Black and Indigenous people. Like we can't like let you be angry, so like we always have to like remind you of love. And Martin Luther King said you have to be nice to me, and that's kind of what I feel like our society reduces him to. And it's not even that like I'm some like scholar on Martin Luther King. I've heard a lot of his work. I don't exactly know if I'm totally nonviolent. Like I don't like violence, but if you come up and slap me, I don't know if I have the strength to like walk away. And I also don't know if that's like a good thing that we should necessarily do now, let people hit us, especially with how dangerous things are getting. But I respect what Martin Luther King did. Like it takes a lot to be able to walk down the street and these dogs are getting sicked on you. And I mean, that's just one of the elders. It's one of the legends. So, you know, I just have nothing but respect. But I do wish the country would like sit down and talk about it a little bit more in depth. But I don't think that we can do that, because we can't even talk about, you know, our nation's original sins and, you know, original atrocities and stuff with any sincerity. So until we can do that, we're probably stuck with the "I have a dream" quotes.
Yeah, that's where it stops basically in terms of the quotes. Like, you know, the love, I have a dream, everybody hold hands.
And I'm not like scoffing at love. Love is a great thing.
Oh, I'm sure, but
it's like
they use
there are other things.
Yeah, yeah. They use that to try to defuse the movement. So, no, everything's fine now. Martin, like Obama now. Martin fixed everything. It's all good. Chill. He said love. Calm down. You know. And that's just, one, it's disrespectful. It's infuriating to hear. And
down here, there's also like a lot of Republicans that like to go around saying that he was Republican.
Oh yeah.
Like I hear that a lot, and it's just like, man, I don't know what you have heard that man say that ever would make you. Well, maybe he was like from an old school conservative family. That's as much as I'll give you. And like maybe they were just registered as that, but I don't think that doesn't line up with his politics.
He's not, and Democrats say that he was.
And he's not a Democrat. Yeah, he's not that either.
Democratic. Yeah, he's. That's what really gets me the most. In talking about our ancestors, the wide majority of them are like, no, system. It has to go for us to be free. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican. You're all tainted. You politicians, we need to get away from this. We need, and we're not listening to that MLK. Even a lot of Black folks, you know.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, he did work with President Johnson, I guess, and I remember he waited to criticize the Vietnam War a little bit because of what Johnson had done for civil rights, and he was hoping to get maybe a little bit more, but he eventually did speak out against it. He wasn't totally isolated from those systems, but
I don't think you
towards the end of his life,
isolated.
Yeah, towards the end of his life, he definitely was expressing a lot of doubts, I think. And
so like it was said before, that when you try to bring up any point against something about capitalism or something about racism, right? You always have, most of the times, Europeans saying something as really absurd as saying like, well, Martin Luther King said.
Yeah.
And it's like we're supposed to just stop and just reflect on one aspect of a person that was so, you know, dynamic, right? Like, but they never sit down and look at his quotes that literally say the evils of capitalism are real as the evils of militarism and the evils of racism, you know, or that he promotes the distribution of political and economic power, which the Black Panthers promoted, but you know, they were gunned down because of COINTELPRO and all these other aspects. But it's really funny how that Europeans trying to paint him as this person that was really like, well, we're not trying to really change nothing. We're just trying to be equal. But it wasn't really about that. It was like drastic change in the system.
Yeah, they have to make that message just less threatening than what it is right now. And I was following some people online, and they were like, well, you know, more than anything, poor people, so like poor people of all races should, you know, read his quotes and understand if no one else is going to. And I agree. They were saying that to with the purpose of saying, you know, we should try to like work more with like poor white people and things like that. And I've never had a problem with that, but it's like there have been obstacles to that for like hundreds of years, and it's not because of anything we were necessarily doing. It's because they got to be white, kind of like. I'm not going to explain Bacon's Rebellion and all that stuff like that, but it's like that's been a really powerful or a hard thing to like kind of overcome. So it's like it was never that we didn't want to work with them, but it's like I don't know how to necessarily facilitate that, and I don't know if we should. There's so many things that we need to do in our own communities. Like I should probably be teaching some, you know, kids in the inner city like coding or something. Like, do I really have the time to be organizing with someone who hates me because of the color of my skin, or who might hate me because of the color of my skin?
Yeah.
But you're bringing up a very good point regarding like, you know, working with Europeans, because there's another quote of MLK where he says, "I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. The Negro's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate." And that's actually something to very like reflect on, because there are Europeans that, at least this is more my kind of perspective, that there are Europeans that try to say that we're here for you, we're helping you, and I'm talking about like more of an indigenous viewpoint. But I always reflect on like simple facts based on like, let's say what MLK is saying now, right? That I'm very disappointed at the white moderate, which we kind of maybe see as what the whole modern term of white ally, right?
Right.
That they say they're there for us, and at least to me, it almost seems like waving around like a good guy back, like I'm on your side. I know this land's stolen, but I keep living on it. Like that's always been something that I never understood. What is their point of trying to point out other people, white or Europeans, that are doing the same thing they're doing?
It's like I was listening to a James Baldwin interview. It's like from 1961, I think. And he was talking kind of about the same type of people, and he was saying that like it's too easy for like those people to like see that on TV and be like, oh, I'm behind them, because like they're not losing anything. Like they're not, like they benefit from the system one way or the other. Like, so maybe they really are with you. I'm sure some of them are, but it's like they still get the privileges, the full privileges of the system as well. So it's like how on your side are they, like, or can they be? Like, how much faith can you put in them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be very hard to tell sometimes as well. Plenty of either friends or colleagues in the activism world, all of a sudden they start saying certain things, or you see certain patterns start to emerge with what they are saying and believing, and then you go, wait a minute, okay, I got to distance myself from that person because he's not really a true ally, because he believes in the system that's been destroying us for so long, and he believes that this republic is more important than the lives of people of color. So that's very difficult. And Martin said that himself later in life. You know, I think the quote goes, "I think we've integrated into a burning house." And
yeah, that's a perfect analogy.
It's depressing as hell, but it's the truth. I know everybody on this panel is more comfortable and feel safer when we're around other people of color and of course our own people versus if we're around white people, even if it's in Beverly Hills or Malibu or the Hamptons, for goodness sake. You're not on the lookout, even subconsciously. Oh wait, so most of these people think I'm lesser than they are. That's a heavy burden, and that's why it's so annoying and disrespectful that our heroes, who many of them were killed by this system, that in this country that all these white people love, their words are just erased. Their contributions are erased, and just looking at some of the heroes through history. When I was a kid, and still today, Native history is barely taught. And if it is, when it is, it's like little bits and pieces, like half-truths. So I learned a little bit about Geronimo and Sitting Bull.
I didn't even get that. I mean, I heard that. I know their names, but like.
What I got was whitewash history, but they were great Americans, and they they were on the side of freedom and equality, and they were great Americans, and everyone was trying to come together. No, they were trying to keep the land, take the land that's already been taken, take it back, get these invaders out of here. And Geronimo died in prison, and Sitting Bull was murdered. Yet, that it's just whitewashed narratives.
We're just too dangerous. We're just too dangerous. Like, or I don't even think that it. I think that they over-exaggerate it, honestly, because I don't really think that it's a dangerous thing to say, or if it's like even a surprising thing is for me to tell somebody like, oh, like I'm not into the founding fathers, like my ancestors or my founders, like the people who like came over in boats and like sat at other people's species and like got worms and had to do all this stuff to like actually ensure that I could be here today. Like those are my founders. Like I don't even think that that's like a difficult thing to understand, but people act like little Susie can't hear anything else. Like she has to hear about George Washington and how George Washington was great. And everybody has to love George Washington. But he wasn't the same person to everybody. Like we were not on the, I think most black people who fought in the Revolutionary War fought for the British. And so that's not because the British were more moral, obviously.
Well, that
because that was the side that was recognizing their humanity at the time.
Yeah.
So that's what they went to. Like that's what they were loyal to. Like why would they be loyal to anything else?
You have one side that wants to continue slavery, and the other's trying to get away from it. You probably want to go with the one trying to get away from it. And that right there, I didn't learn that until I was like 27 years old. That
again, it's not because they're not more moral. Like they're terrible. They in the first place. But in that instance,
well, it's like an election. Well, she's less racist than he is. I'll go with she. I'll vote for she. But that's the whole survival aspect. It's a hornet's nest, to say the least. Illari, when you see, and it's rare, I know, because Native heroes in history, not many people talk about it. But have you seen white folks and the populace at large talk about Native heroes past and present and then whitewash them? And how does that make you feel if you have?
Well, you have the story of Pocahontas, right? Mm. And they try to make it like Disney did this thing where it's like, it's not a love story, it's a rape story, right? Right. We have like those really blatant examples. But if I were to get somebody, like, let's say what they've done to MLK, off the top of my head, I can't pick an individual, but I can say that I feel that we're not taught indigenous history for a reason, because a lot of the words from my ancestors were very, like, harsh. There was no sign of any, like, the way they were talking was, there's no way you can manipulate, like, these words and try to make it, well, it's about love, it's about peace. Like, you got Tecumseh, who literally says in a speech, like, let the white race perish. Like, how are you going to kind of whitewash that, right? What you're going to do is you're not really going to speak about these individuals, right? And, like, there's another example of the people of Acuera who when the Spanish were coming to Florida, they literally told them, they literally said, others of your accursed race have in years past poisoned our peaceful shores. They have taught me what you are. What is your employment? To wander about like vagabonds from land to land, to rob the poor, to betray the confiding, to murder in cold blood the defenseless. Then it says, no, with such people I want no peace, no friendship. War, never-ending war, exterminating war is all the boon I ask. So, like, I don't know how you're going to really manipulate that, but really more obscure, right? It's like, from a, like, as an indigenous people, we should, like, really know these quotes, right? We should be like, no, we said this, we said that, but, you know, there's no whitewashing this. But there is a way to, like, not really put it in books, not really, like, I just reflect on some of these things I read, and I was, well, that explains why I wasn't taught this as a teenager or in school, because then that kind of plants a seed of, like, you know, of resistance, which is what they did in the quote unquote Indian schools. Was the first thing is, like, off my top of my head, I know that there's a quote saying that you never teach, and I'm paraphrasing, you never teach the children the wrongs that the white man has done to them, right? Yeah. Well, you don't want to teach them the wrongs because you're gonna start getting the spirit of rebellion, you know, lit it up, and, you know, next thing you know, the school's on fire, you know. And I think that's the reason why, like, we're not really taught in the truthful light what our ancestors said.
I want to read. I think this quote qualifies as, like, a thing that, like, I know why they didn't teach us that. But it's basically from A Little History. It's only about a paragraph. It says, in the later part of the 18th century, white colonists began to recognize, especially in the areas of the South where Africans and natives outnumbered whites 4-to-1, a great need existed to make natives and Negroes check upon each other. At least the vast superior numbers, we should be crushed by one or the other. Nothing can be more alarming to Carolinians than the idea of an attack from Indians and Negroes. Sorry, I used that word, but that's that's the quote. I know why that wasn't taught. Like, when I read that, and I just read that like 2 weeks ago, and I've seen other quotes like that because I've fortunate enough to be able to look through, like, academic journals, just free with my school, you know, ID. And so I've just been trying to get as much history on Black people and Native people, like, not knowing that it might not all be right, because some of the academia is just like a debate. It's not necessarily about it being right. in terms of our like mythology and origin stories and stuff like that. But like, I feel like there's a lot of history that like is just buried, and it is there. It's just buried, but it would be really, really helpful for like more people to know.
Oh yeah, we have to know it. The only way we can get out of this is knowing, just from a simple concept, the truth. And then when you talk about the truth, knowing what our past reality was, and knowing what our leaders did and said, and what has been done to us, what is still being done to us. I mean, this doesn't pertain to either of our people, but it's still important. The genocide in Yemen at the hands of Saudi Arabia and the United States, that has been absolutely blacked out by the American media, and that's something that we should know, especially because we're talking about people of color, Western aggression, and this is all a pattern.
I have a friend in Brazil who says that a lot of the stuff that's going on there, the government there is preventing from like getting out. I'm not exactly sure what. Well, I did read several articles that were like kind of informing me that like black people are shot there like at an even like higher rate than here. Like it's something.
It's pretty
really
high. It is
crazy.
very high. And that's another thing. The slave ships, went to Brazil. They went to Cuba. They went to Haiti. They went to Paraguay. They went to a lot of places in North and South America. We, because of what we're taught, we're thinking in such limited terms. Well, it's just, America. I guess Canada too. So, no.
And I thought earlier this year that like, dang, I should maybe try to learn Portuguese. Like, there are a lot of black people in Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up, and I knew that there were, like, obviously, like, black people in, like, the Caribbean, and I knew that there were other black people around, but, like, there are a lot of other people that, like, we should probably be speaking to.
Of course.
We should probably just have relationships with, like, those are, like, that's our kin.
I think you take that further. One, black people on the globe, I'm right with you. But also, and this has been done to a point, Palestinians, the Aborigines in
Australia.
That you can really make a big partnership worldwide with that type of effort. I definitely think that's something we need to do, and you and I talk about that a lot ourselves. But and then looking at Palestine, well, indigenous people here, stolen land. This is our land. We were here first. We didn't do anything to anybody. Taken. Palestine. This is our land. We didn't do anything to anybody. Taken. Stolen. So there's so many people.
I don't know what I'm really interested. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm really interested in seeing what the U.S. is going to do about that, because they at least gave lip service to this two-state solution for years and years and years, and so I'm really interested in whether like one person just on the spur of a day is going to just be able to change that. I'm hoping not, but like. We would have all hoped that none of this would ever even happen. But
I was watching a video on the news, and this Palestinian family was bathing with a hose in the middle of the street. You can call it a two-state solution, which it technically is, because they have a little land that they're allowed to use, but it's really one big country with like a little settlement. So I mean, it's a 1.5 state solution, or it's a 1 state solution with a little piece of land. It's basically the words of or the message of America and Israel. Go Israel, Israel #1. Let's just support them.
We got way too many evangelicals for that not to be the case.
Oh, it's And there's more history that we're not taught. You know, after World War II, they felt so bad for Jewish people, and everyone should always feel bad for what happened to them. But we'll give you a country. Don't people already live there? Doesn't matter. We'll deal with it.
Britain and the U.S. were really good for that.
And those countries, along with a number of other European countries, still doing a bunch of damage to both of our people. But it's really, it makes me grind my teeth when I see not only white people do it, because they're obviously known for it, but when we do it. And for why Cory Booker did, I can't remember what it was a speech. It was a speech he gave, a very impassioned speech against Trump. And this is a man who admires Thomas Jefferson, admires the Founding Fathers.
But was he ever given like a chance, like to not like? When are you ever told that like you can have another opinion? Of course, you as an adult like should realize that you can have another opinion. But like, no one, like everyone always says that like we're a free society and like we debate things out in the open. But there are plenty of things that we actually don't say, or like there are plenty of like opinions and things that like they try to clamp out before they can get out. Like I was always taught, like in all my history classes, they were always taught by like these white conservative guys, and sometimes I even got along with them. Like they were nice people, especially like the more professional ones, who didn't necessarily tell you what their opinion was, but you could kind of like intuit it from other things. But no one ever like tells you that like, oh no, you don't have to give Thomas Jefferson a pass, because he writes in Notes of Virginia that like he knows that if there is a God, that he cannot possibly take their side on the issue of slavery. So like you actually don't have to give him a pass for that. You actually don't.
So
everybody tells you that you do.
Like a lot of politicians, especially ones of color, are just robotic.
It's not necessarily being robotic. It's just like everybody teaches you that you have to love these people, or that like they were just so great. They ushered in all of these ideas, and I don't know, maybe some of them were revolutionary for their time from their system, from the aspect of their system. Maybe that was revolutionary, but I don't know if it was revolutionary to all of us in the same way. Definitely don't feel it was to black people or Native people, but like, I don't know, maybe it was to some other people, but
they were far behind us politically, and still are if you look back at the politics that we had before they came over. Well, that's one thing. I tweeted this, or I was talking about. I can't remember. I was thinking about it in my own head. One of the three a few hours ago, about how their heroes, their Washington's, Roosevelt's, Churchill's, you name it, are completely whitewashed, and all the good stuff is told and none of the bad stuff. But then with our heroes, those heroes trying to stop the Washingtons, the Churchills, that stuff, no, we're erasing that from history. We're just going to do, when they said quotes about love and understanding and tolerance, that's what we'll give you.
Right.
We're not going to give you anything else. I mean, I remember I did a project in, I don't know, 3rd grade, and it was Black History Month. And I just said, you can pick any hero from Black History. So I W.E.D. Du Bois. And the other kids, who the hell is this? Who is it? Yeah. And I can't remember what I put in the report, but it wasn't. I'll just say this: it ruffled feathers, because if you read the brother, you know how uncompromising he is with his ideology and his writings and his work back in the day. He'd even call out other black activists, revolutionaries, or scholars for
I really enjoy his critiques of Booker T. Washington.
Yeah, that's the main person I think of when I talk about
all
that.
the conservative teachers that I ever had loved Booker T. Washington. And Booker T. Washington did a lot of stuff. Like, he was a great person for his time. Yeah, but like, they like him mostly because he's saying, oh, black people should just get an education and not worry about civil rights. And
stand in the corner, be quiet.
Pull your bootstraps up and stuff like that. And like, Booker T. Washington is like sometimes like completely devoid of like any real like analysis of himself. Like, you're a light-skinned mulatto person. Like, you got to go to school and you got to get the education that you did because of that. He tells the story in his book, and that's fine. It's great that you got that opportunity. There are plenty of other people who didn't get that opportunity. I don't think Frederick Douglass got that opportunity.
I don't think he did. It's a miracle that
he did get other opportunities because he was a good writer, but he didn't get the chance to go to a school that necessarily wasn't for black people.
Well, and there's another one. The 4th of July speech that Frederick wrote, one of the greatest speeches ever. That's not taught, in schools growing up, because
I think I might have actually seen that. I might have seen that in school. I was in AP classes, though. I don't know if they. I don't know what they teach everywhere. I think I might have seen that one.
Well, that brings a smile on my face. At the least, it's rare, and I don't see those quotes from white liberals or.
All I ever got of Martin Luther King was "I Have a Dream" and "Letter from Birmingham Jail." Everything else I had to do solo.
Same here. Though the Birmingham jail thing, I just figured that one out on my own as well. But looking at, I think one thing that is always forgotten with the revolution and the movement, whatever you want to call it, since this whole thing started, is how women of color they're just, pushed aside. Like Winnie Mandela has done incredible things, but she's just Nelson's wife. Coretta Scott King, incredible things.
Is he still alive, Willie?
Winnie's still alive, thankfully.
Okay.
Thank God she's still alive. But with that thought, Illari, could you kind of speak to how the heroes who are women of color through history are either not remembered at all or whitewashed, and their work is being forgotten?
I could give an example with Purina, who rebelled against the missionaries in what we call California now. That in her quote, she literally says "Be done with you, white invaders." There's historical figures you don't get a lot of detail about their lives. So that's one example. There's other examples of women, indigenous women fighting in wars. They're not really given credit. I know that it was really bizarre for Europeans to see that, in the Mexica culture, they had more rights, right, than European women. So that in general has always been not exposed from indigenous culture. That even for example, because we were talking about the founding fathers, in the Iroquois nation, the women get to pick who's going to be the leader. That's one example. So I think in a broader aspect, that Europeans couldn't even believe that's how we maintain a society. There was times where they would meet quote unquote women chief, and it would be the most bizarre thing to them, So, but I want to talk about you guys mentioned what the quote unquote founding fathers did. Was it radical or But then there's also, it's not given credit that it's a fact that they took ideas from the Iroquois nation, from the Great Law of Peace. So that's like one thing that's not given credit. It was, in a sense, what they were seeing was radical because they're seeing like they're what the Constitution is now 1,000 years before they had something where people had rights to literally think different, you know, and they didn't. They came from systems where they have a king. They have no say. There's no democracy per se. So I guess it is, but they were never they never gave credit for where they got what they got this from. They obviously took all the land from indigenous people. Then there's like the other aspect that we say things like going back to whitewashing things. But I kind of, for the founding fathers, I see it more like they make them into saints of some sort. Mm-hmm. Like they did no wrong. They were these men that nobody has ever thought of anything they've ever spoken of, you know? And but they were nothing but, really, to me, genocidal maniacs. Like, when we say something like, you know, we use Hitler a lot, like, oh, if somebody's subjugating our people, whether it's indigenous or African, like, oh, it's like a Hitler. But really, we shouldn't even be using Hitler as an example because here in quote-unquote America, we have the founding fathers, which are literally like serial killers at best, you know? Because you have like quotes like this where they're calling for the total extermination of indigenous people. So you got Thomas Jefferson saying that the conferred fertilization, if not the extermination of this race in our America, is therefore it's going to form an additional chapter in English history. So like, my people are literally just going to be a chapter in history. That's what he wants. Then you have George Washington, which was called Town Destroyer, where he says the immediate objectives are the total destruction and devastation of their settlements and the capture of as many prisoners of age and sex as possible. It is essential to ruin their crops in the ground and prevent them from planting again. And it's funny because it says crops, destroying where we get food from. And then if like you look back at what they were doing, it was literally systematic genocide that what the United Nations defines as now. Like what they did can be defined as that. And then there's a continuation of that, to be honest with you, through cultural genocide, which is technically something you can't do. If people are going to follow international laws, that's a continuing thing, cultural genocide of indigenous people. You got people like me who walk around being called Latino. Like, that's a cultural genocide, because why am I being forced to use such a label? But yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to touch on, because it was mentioned that the founding fathers and then how the Iroquois nations did have women involved in their democracy.
I was reading, that really spoke to me, by the way, but you made me think of, I was reading that they used like the theme of slavery a lot to like justify the revolution. So like when they were like writing about like why they were going to separate and what gave them the right, they invoked the imagery of slavery a lot. Like, so they would, we need to do this so we won't be slaves. When your liberty is taken away, like you have to do this. And like, I thought about for the first time, like that's actually really insulting. It's like just to us as like black and Native people too, who also experienced slavery. That's like, you're not even experiencing slavery. Like, whatever your problem with the British monarchy is, it's like nothing compared to us. Nothing. It's nothing. And like for you to write documents and like ground that as your justification why you have the right to do that, it's actually really insulting.
They've been on that hypocritical and insulting train since the jump, and that's what happens when you don't consider another group of people, or in this case, two groups of people, as humans. They don't believe that we're humans. The Declaration of Independence to this day.
They knew we were humans. Like, I know that people say that, and I know what they mean by that, but like when you read their private writings, the reason why they're resisting that so much is because they need it economically. It's like Jefferson, he knew slavery was wrong. He had supported like legislation to gradually end it, like when he was like 22 in the House of Burgesses. over his life, he got more and more in debt. Jefferson died like $100,000 in debt. $100,000 in that time, how much money would that be worth? Like millions of dollars probably. And so like he can't extrapolate himself from that financial debt. And so he can't really act on what he knows. But that's like, that doesn't give you a pass on something like that. Like he knows, like even when he's talking about like natural rights, like he's talking about these inalienable rights that are just so self-evident. Like you don't have to explain them because you as a rational human being, when you hear this, like you just know what it means. But like when he's writing in Notes of Virginia, like he uses all this scientific language to like justify why blacks are inferior, his scientific racism. And I was just interested in like the juxtaposition between something that you were saying, liberty and freedom, that you were saying that was self-evident, like it didn't need any explanation. And then to explain this racism, like you have to get really technical and like really like dig into like some I mean, he didn't know it was pseudoscience, but it is pseudoscience. I think that that's an interesting juxtaposition. It's like, if you know that these things are self-evident, then what you're saying over here with the scientific racism stuff, it doesn't matter. And on some level, I feel that he knew that. Like, maybe he never conscientiously said that, but he did have 4 or 5 kids with a black lady after saying it. So I feel like, I feel like you know that, man.
Well, I think that's a good point, because all racists are different. Because I look at someone like Washington or Jackson or Custer, I can't see how they viewed black and indigenous people as human beings. Just the absolute lack of humanity of how they treated us, just carving us up, cutting us up, whipping us until we're either dead or finally, okay, I'll do whatever you want. And Jackson, especially, the way he would murder indigenous people. He was also a slave owner. He cut the noses off of Native people and sent them to his girlfriends as trophies. I mean, that's psychotic. That's a psychopathic behavior. Of course, this guy's president, and even before Trump came in office, he's had his portrait up there in the White House. He has statues in cities named after him, the whole nine. And as you call it, the Iroquois Constitution, speaking of hypocrisy and things, just like, you say one thing, you do the other, or you in this case, tweak the things that you don't want to put in your Constitution. But the Iroquois Constitution, it clearly states, do not invade land that is not yours. And yet, well, Americans, Europeans, no, we're going to invade all of this land that isn't ours, and then we're going to make it ours.
Well, that's what, I mean, it's easier to do those things, when you believe your God is telling you that you can do them. So I can enslave you because you don't worship the same God. That's been a way that humans have been terrible to each other probably since forever. But then when you also can get that coupled with white supremacy, it's like, not only like does my God say like you are a heathen, like I'm also just better than you, 'cause I'm white. Like it's just like a double thing. It's like you don't have to necessarily think of us as human all the time, but there's some. I don't think that anyone can just walk around like that 24/7. There are very few people who could pull that off their entire life, like just going without the knowledge that they are hurting people. I feel like they had a lot of ways to get around it, and like I think this country might have been one of them. Like founding this country and it's supposed to be about all these ideals. It's like, oh well, I was doing something in the name of this, so maybe it was worth it. But
maybe if we think about, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that like I hope that at least since they couldn't do anything about it, since they didn't do anything about it, like I hope that they were at least that honest with themselves before they died.
Well, it's an interesting kind of, I mean, it's more of a psychological thing to think about, right? Like what was going through their minds. But I think sometimes I simplistically kind of, not simplistically, but kind of like analyze it to its core, where it's like, well, Western society does produce the most amount of serial killers in the world.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, you know? And, like, yeah, why is that occurring? Well, there's a story here where people were monsters. And sometimes, like, thinking about, like, did they know what they were doing? Well, I remember going to a, kind of like a lecture on Dia de los Muertos, right? Some PhD lady European lady was giving some kind of lecture. And then the people were asking, like, where can we look for information on, like, what was really expressed or what was the actual traditions of Dia de los Muertos? Okay, well, people are like, well, we don't, the lady giving the lecture was like, well, there's no, like, resources. And then somebody brought up book burnings, right? The book burnings that Europeans committed here, that they destroyed Mexica books and Maya books. And this European, like, because they're talking about, like, how do they justify these things? Well, on a softer level, they continue to justify these things with saying, like, well, indigenous people were killing each other here, so we just killed them better, you know? And then they have, for example, this lady said that, well, there's book burnings going around in Europe and everywhere, and so, you know, book burning here, Mayan people's books, you know, same thing. It's just a thing people did back then, kind of attitude.
Yeah,
and it was really like, huh?
Oh, it was just a rationalization.
Yeah, and it was really like, wow. I sat there saying, like, you just rationalize the destruction of treasures. Like some of these books were scientific treasures. And here's the friar that wrote about when people were doing, you know, the Europeans were book burning some of these books. I have a quote here, which is very interesting to look at, where he sees that this friar, Diego de Landa, sees that what is in these books, but they burn them anyway. So I'm just going to read this quote. These people also use certain, and this is about the Mayan codices, these people also use certain characters or letters with which they wrote their books about the antiquities and their sciences. So if we break down that quote, it says, like, it's characters and letters. So for a long time, the Mayan were thought that they never had a writing system. So it's kind of interesting to kind of just see that here, where it seems like this person's rationalizing that some of these things are stories, and they seem to be using letters, and it's part of their sciences, right? With these figures and certain signs, and the figures, they understood their matters, made them known, and taught them. We found a great number of books in these letters, and since they contained nothing but superstitions and falsehoods of the devil, we burned them all, which they took most grievously, and which gave them great pain. So, they're writing like that. My sisters were in pain seeing some of these books being burned, right? But yet, look at the dichotomy. He comes in like, oh, they're writings of the devil. But in one part, he says they're writings about their matters and their science. Like, he's contradicting himself in this small paragraph. And I would just like to point out why the reason why, like, my ancestors had great pain in this is because some of these, the ones that there's only 4 Mayan books, right, left. And some of these books have, like, astronomical correlations, like, say, the cycles of Venus, for example. And these are actual sciences, right? And to see some of these things destroyed, and some of these are stories, like, for example, these Europeans would make our ancestors kind of orally repeat and write down the stories, and it's just like the whole cosmology of indigenous people from quote-unquote Central America. I mean, it has to be painful to see your people's history turn into ashes. So, reflecting back on what we just discussed, it was really grotesque to see this lady, like, justify the destruction of codices as, well, they were burning stuff for Europe, so they kind of burned everything down here, you know? It's like, that's not, like, acceptable. And then on top of this, a lot of these codices are literally being held hostage by the people that burned them. And they literally burned the books, stole the rest, and now it's like the Vatican has some of these codices.
Oh,
it's
do they
pretty
really? The Vatican?
Yeah, the Vatican has some of these codices.
I know.
Like the Borgia, Codex Borgia, that's a Mistec codices from, like, it's because some of these codices are, like, grouped into categories. Mm-hmm. So, like, some would be Mexica, some would be, like, a different part of central Mexico. And then you got the Mayan, which is only 4 Mayan codices. And, I mean, I'm just saying, like, some of these are, like, literally, there's some in, like, a British museum somewhere, some school in Britain has them, some the Vatican has, some are, I don't think any of it, are some of them here? Maybe here too. But my point is, like, Europeans burned them and they stole them too.
If we did that to them,
Britain and France have so much of our stuff, like,
oh, of course.
They have so much. And, like, somebody showed me, like, kind of like an agreement that they would do, like, when they would go to places like Egypt or whatever, and they would dig. And, like, they would get deals where, like, they just got to pretty much keep pretty much everything. Now, if you, like, go there and, like, do an excavation, like, you don't keep jack. That's why I get kind of excited if I hear that they found, like, a tomb and it has some stuff in it, because it's like, they're never going to send all that stuff back.
So it's kind of like the greatest thieves, and quote-unquote greatest, I mean, it's not even probably the right word, the greatest thieves in the world.
Exactly.
Call us thieves. Like, it's crazy because, like, a museum is, like, it's literally, like, all the stuff they stole.
Yeah.
And it's called a museum. But if we had it, it'd be like, well, this is where they're stashing all the stuff they stole, you know?
We'd burn us at the stake. If we dug up the graves of George Washington or something, can you imagine?
I don't want to dig that up.
For 5 seconds. I mean, I like to dig it up and maybe, piss on it or...
It's dead. It's a dead body. I'm going to leave him right where he is.
Well, superstition.
I'm from the South. I'm a little superstitious.
I can understand that. But the point being, if we did that stuff to them, they'd, dig up Henry VIII, they'd lose their minds. And they should, because you're supposed to, someone dies and they're buried in the ground, you let them rest. You don't dig them up for the purposes of art and science.
The tombs, I'm kind of like, okay, maybe that did contribute to, like, our knowledge, but, like, you could put them back, like, now. Like, do we, like, need them out?
But at least do that. It's one thing when you find, you're doing a dig somewhere and you find bones.
It's also because that stuff's, like, 10,000 years old, probably didn't have any living, like, I don't know. I think, like, the ethical thing scientifically is that you're not supposed to have, like, any, like, living relatives or anybody who could, like, speak to them. That wouldn't be the case for a lot of things that they probably dug up on Native people.
But you would think that after so many years of, let's say, holding something that they know that their race stole from us, right? You would think, like, they would just come out and say, like, you know what, I think we need to facilitate and give this back, and we need to facilitate, like, some ancient stuff needs to be taken care of a certain way, right? But I would think you would facilitate,
I'd hope so.
Put it in a building, right temperature, whatever. But that never occurs. Like, there's an example of a Mexican man going to, I believe, Paris, where they had one of the codices, and he took it back. He took it back, right? He pretended to be a student, was able to gain access where the codices was. He grabbed it. He got on a plane, came back to Mexico. And you have, like, Europe, right? Mm-hmm. Literally saying, like, hey, can you give it back? I'm like, give it back? But you stole it. So, like, you really got to question, like, I don't think they want to give things back.
No. That's because they don't want to stop all this.
This website
that
says
they're putting through.
That the Louvre in Paris, it minus all of the contents would cost about $10.5 billion. They got $10.5 billion worth of other people's stuff in the Louvre. Must be a nice business plan.
Yeah. Well, geez, you can pull that off. The tab for reparations just keeps going higher and higher. I mean, my goodness. Especially if you add in all the different nations that participated in the slave trade. Of course, many of them got, the slaves got reparations for, the slave owners got reparations for losing slaves because they were considered property. So this is
we do everything wrong. We just do everything wrong. This society does everything wrong. Everything backwards.
I wouldn't use the words we because this. Granted, we live in this society, but it's not our society, if that makes any sense. But yeah, that's. And the other thing that most of us don't want to see or accept, we are allergic. We are allergic to this society. We are allergic to these politics. We are allergic to this faith of white Christianity, the majority, of Western culture practices. We're allergic to all this stuff. Yet we are, we're comfortable. Time has passed. It's not that bad. Let's just kind of assimilate and breathe. It's
like, what do people? I guess I don't know. If you've never seen anything else, then I guess what do you do? Or like everybody has to feel like they belong to something, or like they. I get what you're saying, but like I'm trying to figure out like how people would like really go through life like not feeling. I guess like they had like a country or something like that, because it's so like embedded in our minds that we have to like we live in like this nation state or.
Well, that's another problem. Like obviously indigenous and black problems are very similar. There's many of them very similar or the same. One thing that's different is we're far away from our land, and we're not. Most of us don't know which particular nation we're from, but Native people, at the least, well, okay, this is all this is all their land. Obviously, in terms of U.S. law, not anymore, but this is still rightfully their land, and they're still, they could go to place B or place C. Oh, okay, my family was from there, and even then, some of that is erased. But
even
we want to be, like you said, you want to feel like you belong somewhere. So since that cord to Africa has been cut, well, we live here. Let's just go with the Americana aspect of things.
Well, it's kind of like, I don't know, we didn't immigrate, so like we have almost like the experience as though we did, but like we didn't. Like, but even if we were in Africa, would we really know like where our ancestors, quote unquote, came from? Like, we moved around Africa all the time. Like, and Africa didn't really have like borders. Like sometimes like you'll see like empires or civilizations of Africa like from the past, and like they will have like a border. But I was reading an article and it was like there were like no borders. Like there was that's kind of just like a rough idea of what area they might have lived in. Like it's not, even though shapes aren't like real. I don't know. It is great that.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
no, sorry. Go ahead. I have a question for both of you guys. So, like, you know how indigenous people have different terms to describe themselves? For example, I use the term Nicanplaca, which is an alt word for here people, which is like found in the Florentine Codex and various like there's like I think 13 books that point or Mexica, the Mexica or Nahuatl people, that term to kind of like, because before we went, like you were explaining how like Africa didn't have borders, it wasn't really the same, we migrated so much, we did the same, right? So like a lot of us would identify with our nation states before, and after Europeans came in, we started saying Nicanplaca as a differentiation between like that's a European version and then you're one of us kind of thing, right? Not I don't think it was necessarily an aspect of like being a race, because like that's even another discussion. Like, what was race before Europeans, right?
Right.
So my question to you guys is, as what term have because we use like if I say an African descent person, right? But that's based on a colonial name for your guys' land, right? Like when I'm called Native, like let's say somebody calls me Native American, that wouldn't be like a correct term, because it's like, well, this isn't really in America, right? And so is there a term out there that African people use?
I tried to look that up once. Like, that's a great question, and if anybody knows the answer, I will send you like the biggest muffin basket. I looked it up, but like what I found, it looked suspect. It didn't look like it was real, honestly. And it was kind of like in this fake Arabic, and then I took it to a friend who could speak Arabic, and he was like, yeah, I think somebody just made that up. The only thing I really know about that is that like there are like lots of like theories about what like Africa means or whatever. And I was literally reading an article this morning, and it was saying that, well, this particular author was saying that he favors the theory that it is from Carthage, and it means corn. But I don't know how to like confirm that, and I don't know if there would have been like a collectivized name for the continent, because even like the different ethnicities like Fulani and what is the Bantu, the Igbo, and stuff like that. I don't think that they used to call themselves those collective things either. I think that they used to like live in like communities of like associated king groups, and they used to like kind of speak the same language. But I don't know if all of them had like a name for themselves as a collective, if that makes sense.
The meaning of Africa, and the sunny place. Now I've
heard that too.
The question of what was the name of the continent? Yeah, I draw a blank on that one too, because obviously here, well, just for North America, it's Turtle Island. I don't know what natives call South America, or what the name should be.
Like you said, it's more complicated than like how we draw the world map now, right? With like all these like strict borders and stuff. But like for South America, the largest, one of the largest empires, or kind of like the last one from the Inca, they would call their area Tiwantinsuyu. So like as a collective, you could kind of use Tiwantinsuyu for South America. That would be like one, at least an option, right? Than saying South America.
But I thought like whether maybe we should like find another name for it, like. But I don't have a problem with Africa. But yeah, I've heard a lot of different theories about where it comes from. But the only agreement I've seen is that like it seems to like stick around somewhere after like the Third Punic War, is the saying. So after like Rome defeats Carthage, which is like on like the northern shores of Africa on the Mediterranean, it was like a rival of Rome's. After they defeat it, it looks like that was maybe a I don't know how you would say that, a Carthaginian word, and they just kept it. But I don't know what it means. I don't think that anyone knows for sure.
I would have been before Christ, so
yeah,
or before Jesus, depending on what you believe in. Excuse me. But that there have been a few hundred years before the birth of Huzace.
Okay, so this is saying that this is it's derived from the tribe Afri in antiquity. So maybe that's it. I don't know. We've had 3 different things already.
Well, I bring up the year.
Because I was like, well, I wonder what it's like. What would it be like? You know, because it's just, I guess I viewed it as like, I know that like at least effort, like it came from somebody's name or something. Like, and European kind of named it that, you know? And But also, like, even if it derives from mixing like an indigenous word with their word or something like that, because they did that a lot in our continent, right? So like you got Nicaragua, which is like the story behind that is like, okay, well, there was a chief named Nicaragua and there's a lake, so it's now Nicaragua. This was Spanish, but it's like, I think that's like I was like, I don't know about that because there's no R in Nawa, and then it's like, okay, that's already kind of flimsy, you know. So they did that a lot. So even if they used it, I was just wondering, like, what is there was a better way to address people of African descent that would be more like, you know, more true to the root.
Yeah. I think it was. I know that they also used to call us Ethiopians or like Ethiops, like, and that was a name for like all like dark skinned Africans. That was like the name that they get Greece used. I feel, but that was kind of like they tend to be like really generalized. Anytime like Europeans like give you a name, like it's usually really generalized. So they would usually use that for anybody who like came from like sub-Saharan Africa. Like all of that was Ethiops. Yeah, this is exactly what I've seen this. I don't know that this is. I don't know if this is right. I couldn't tell. I'm talking to Nolan. He sent me.
Yeah, I don't know if we all saw what I just put in the chat, but there's one thing from a South African website.
Okay, so this is the exact name I was talking about before, and what I didn't want to say out loud is what I kind of felt like it was maybe a bit of propaganda from our Arab friends, but I love them. But I love them. I don't know. It just looked a little Arabic to me, and I was just like, I don't know. I don't think that's. I don't know.
What I've seen myself is the alleged name for Africa, or the original name. They say it's from an Arabic of Arabic descent. So you kind of go like, wait a minute, we were there first. That you came over. Yeah, that's. I think there should be homework for this week for the two of us trying to figure that out. What's the actual original name of Africa?
I will work on it.
Yeah, we'll compare notes and see where we are.
All right.
But this was great as always, and I'm glad we have a new face on the panel.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Illari, for joining us, and hope to have you back again in the future.
Anytime, man.
Thank you for inviting me.
See you guys later.
My pleasure. You have a good week.
All right, you too.
All right.